من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباءهم فهم غافلون لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون وسواء عليهم أنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشرهم بمغفرة وأجر كريم إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاءها المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم اثنين فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم ولمسنكم منا عذاب عليم قالوا طائركم معكم وإن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون وما لي أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون أتخذ من دون الله آلهة إن يردني الرحمن بضر لا تغني عني شفاعة شيئا ولا ينقذون إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين إني فاسمعون قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون ألم يروا كم أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون وآية لهم الأرض الميتة أحييناها وأخرجنا منها حبا فمنه يأكلون وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وعنب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملت أيديهم فلا يشكرون سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون وآية لهم الليل نسلك منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالعرجون القديم لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون وآية لهم أنا حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون وإن نشاء نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفهم لعلهم ترحمون وما تأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين وإذا قيل لهم أنفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أنطعم من لو يشاء الله وأطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يقسمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قولا من رب رحيم وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أعهد إليكم يا بني آدم أن لا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تاكلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمون أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لمسكناهم على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسكناهم على مكانة فما استطاعوا مزيا ولا يرجعون ومن نؤمر ننكس في الخلق أفلا يأكلون وما علمناه شعرا وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وذللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محصرون ولا يحزنك قولهم إننا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم يرى الإنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلنا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحيي الذي أنشأ أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجرة الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده وملكوت وكل شيء وإليه ترجعون اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد سورة مباركة الفاتحة.
30 सेकंड जी. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. اللهم صل على محمد. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. اللهم صل على محمد. أشهد أن أمير المؤمنين وإمام المتقين عليا ولي الله صلوات الله. أشهد أن أمير المؤمنين وإمام المتقين عليا حجة الله. اللهم صل على محمد. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. حي على خير العمل. حي على خير العمل. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. لا إله إلا الله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. وأن عليا ولي الله عليه الصلاة والسلام. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. حي على خير العمل، حي على خير العمل. قد قامت الصلاة، قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر، الله أكبر، لا إله إلا الله. استغفر الله من كل ذنب وأتوب إليه إنه كان توابا. الله أكبر. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك وانحر إن شانئك هو الأبتر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله. سمع له لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد وأركع وأسجد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. كذلك الله ربنا. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. ربنا فاغفر لنا ذنوبنا وكفر عنا سيئاتنا وتوفنا مع الأبرار. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع له لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد وأركع وأسجد. سبحان الله والحمد لله لا إله إلا الله. سبحان الله والحمد لله لا إله إلا الله. سبحان الله والحمد لله لا إله إلا الله. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع له لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. يا من له الدنيا والآخرة ارحم من ليس له الدنيا والآخرة. الله أكبر. بسم الله وبالله والحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليكم. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. لا إله إلا الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم وأن عليا حجة الله عليه الصلاة والسلام. حي على الصلاة، حي على الصلاة، حي على الفلاح، حي على الفلاح، حي على خير عمل، حي على خير عمل. قد قامت الصلاة، قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر، الله أكبر، لا إله إلا الله. استغفر الله من كل ذنب وأتوب إليه إنه كان توابا. الله أكبر. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع له لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد وأركع وأسجد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. كذلك الله ربنا. الله أكبر. اللهم اجعل عواقب أمورنا خيرا. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع له لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد وأركع وأسجد. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله. استغفر الله ربي. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع له لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد وأركع وأسجد. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله. أستغفر الله من كل ذنب وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. سمع له لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله
سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمدي اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد عجل فرجهم سبوح قدوس رب الملائكة والروح.
الله أكبر. بسم الله وبالله والحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله لا إله إلا الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. لا إله إلا الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء وبقوتك التي قهرت بها كل شيء وخضع لها كل شيء وذل لها كل شيء وبجبروتك التي غلبت بها كل شيء وبعزتك التي لا يقوم لها شيء وبعظمتك التي ملأت كل شيء وبسلطانك الذي على كل شيء وبوجهك الباقي بعد فناء كل شيء وبأسمائك التي ملأت أركان كل شيء وبعلمك الذي أحاط بكل شيء وبنور وجهك الذي أضاء له كل شيء. يا نور يا قدوس يا أول الأولين ويا آخر الآخرين. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحت كل اسم. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل النكم. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعم. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدعاء. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تقطع الرجاء. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل البلاء. اللهم اغفر لي كل ذنب أذنبته وكل خطيئة أخطأتها. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك بذكرك واستشفع بك إلى نفسك وأسألك بجودك أن تضنعني من قربك وأن توزعني شكرك وأن تلهمني ذكرك. اللهم إني أسألك سؤال خاضع متذلل خاشع أن تسامحني وترحمني وتجعلني باسمك راضيا قانعا وفي جميع الأحوال متواضعا. اللهم وأسألك سؤال من اشتدت فاقته وأنزل بك عند الشدائد حاجته وأعظم فيما عندك رغبته. اللهم أعظم سلطانك ولا مكانك وخفي مكرك وزهر أمرك وغلب قهرك وجرت قدرتك ولا يمكن الفرار من حكومتك. اللهم لا أجد لذنوبي غافرا ولا لكبائر ساترا ولا لشيء من أمل القبيح بالحسن مبدلا غيرك. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك وبحمدك. ظلمت نفسي وتجرأت بجهلي وسكنت إلى قديم ذكرك لي ومنك علي. اللهم مولاي كم من قبيح سترت وكم من فاده من البلاء أكلت وكم من إسار وقيته وكم من مكروه دفت وكم من سناء جميل لست أهلا له نشرت. اللهم عظم بلاي وأفرط بي سوء حالي وقصرت بي آمالي وقعدت بي أغلالي وحبسني عن نفعي بعد أملي وخدت أني للدنيا بغرورها ونفسي بجنايتها ومثالي. يا سيدي فاسألك بعزتك أن لا يحجب عنك دعائي سوء عملي وفعالي ولا تفزعني بخفي ما اطلعت عليه من سري ولا تعاجلني بالعقوبة على ما عملته في خلواتي من سوء فعلي وإساءتي ودوام تفريطي وجهالتي وكثرة شهواتي وغفلتي وكن اللهم بعزتك لي في كل الأحوال رؤوفا وعلي في جميع الأمور أتوفا. إلهي وربي من لي غيرك أسأله كشف ضري والنظر في أمري. إلهي ومولاي أجريت علي حكما اتبعت فيه هوى نفسي ولم أحترس فيه من تزييني عدوي فغرني بما أحوى واسأله علي ذلك القضاء فتجاوزت بما جرى علي من ذلك بعض حدودك وخالفت بعض أوامرك فلك الحمد علي في جميع ذلك ولا حجة لي فيما جرى علي فيه قضاؤك والزمني حكمك وبلاؤك. وقد أتيتك يا إلهي بعد تقصيري وإسرافي على نفسي معتذرا نادما منكسرا مستقيلا مستغفرا منيبا مقرا مدئنا معترفا لا أجد مفرا مما كان مني ولا مفزعا أتوجه إليه في أمري غير قبولك عذري وإدخالك إياي في ساعة رحمتك. اللهم فاقبل عذري وارحم شدة ذري وفكني من شدي وساكي. يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني ورقة جلدي ودقة عزمي. يا من بدا خلقي وذكري وتربيتي وبري وتعزيتي هبني لابتداء كرمك وصالف برك بي. يا إلهي وسيدي وربي أتراك معذبي بنارك بعد توحيدك وبعد ما انتوى عليه قلبي من معرفتك ولهج به لساني من ذكرك وأعتقد ضميري من حبك وبعد صدق أترافي ودعائي خاضعا لربوبيتك. هيهات أنت أكرم من أن تضيع من ربيت أو تبعد من أدنيت أو تشرد من آويت أو تسلم إلى البلاء من كفيته ورحمت. وليت شعري يا سيدي وإلهي ومولاي أتسلط النار على وجوهي هرت لعظمتك ساجدا ولا ألسنا نطقت بتوحيدك صادقا وبشكرك مادها ولا قلوب اعترفت بإلهيتك محققا ولا ضمائر حوت من العلم بك حتى صارت خاشعة ولا جوارها ساءت إلى أوطان تعبدك طائعة وشارت باستغفارك مدئنا. ما هكذا الظن بك ولا أخبرنا بفضلك عنك يا كريم يا ربي وأنت تعلم ضعفي عن قليل من البلاء الدنيا عقوباتها وما يجري فيها من المكاره على أهلها. ألا أن ذلك بلاء مكروه وقليل مقصود يسير بقاء قصير مدته فكيف احتمال البلاء الآخرة وجليل وقوع المكاره فيها وهو بلاء تطول مدته ويدوم مقامه ولا يخفف عن أهله لأنه لا يكون إلا عن غضبك وانتقامك وسخطك، وهذا ما لا تقوم له السماوات والأرض. يا سيدي فكيف لي وأنا عبدك الضعيف الذليل الحقير المسكين المستكين. يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي، لأي الأمور إليك أشكو، ولما منها أزيج وأبكي؟ لعليم العذاب والشدة أم لطول البلاء ومدته؟ فلئن سيرتني للعقوبات مع أعدائك، وجمعت بيني وبين أهل بلائك، وفرقت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك، فهبني يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي وربي. صبرت على عذابك فكيف أصبر على فراقك؟ وهبني يا إلهي صبرت على حر نارك فكيف أصبر عن النظر إلى كرامتك؟ أم كيف أسكن في النار ورجائي عفوك؟ فبعزتك يا سيدي ومولاي أقسم صادقا لئن تركتني نعتك لأزيجن إليك بين أهلها زجيج الآملين، ولا أصرخن إليك صراخ المستصرخين، ولا أبكين عليك بكاء الفاقدين، ولو نادينك أين كنت يا ولي المؤمنين، يا غاية أعمال العارفين، يا غياث المستغيثين، يا حبيب قلوب الصادقين، ويا إله العالمين. أفتراك سبحانك يا إلهي وبحمدك تسمع فيها صوت عبد مسلم سجن فيها بمخالفتي، وذاقت أعمى بها بمعصيتي، وحبس بين أطباقها بجرمه وجريرتي، وهو يزيج إليك زجيج مؤمل رحمتك، ويناديك بلسان أهل توحيدك، ويتوسل إليك بربوبيتك. يا مولاي فكيف يبقى في العذاب وهو يرجو ما سلف من حلمك؟ أم كيف تؤلمه النار وهو يعمل فضلك برحمتك؟ أم كيف يحركه لهيبها وأنت تسمع صوتا وترى مكانا؟ أم كيف يشتمل عليه زفيرها وأنت تعلم ضعفا؟ أم كيف يتكلكل بين أطباقها وأنت تعلم صدقا؟ أم كيف تزجره زبانيتها وهو يناديك يا رب؟ أم كيف يرجو فضلك في إتكه منها فتتركه فيها؟ هيهات ما ذلك الظن بك ولا المعروف من فضلك، ولا مشبه لما عملت به الموحدين من برك وإحسانك. فباليقين أقطع لولا ما حكمت به من تعذيب جاهديك، وقضيت به من إقلاد معانديك، لجعلت النار كلها بردا وسلاما، وما كانت لأحد فيها مقرا ولا مقاما. لكنك تقدست أسماؤك أقسمت أن تملاها من الكافرين من الجنة والناس أجمعين، وأن تخلد فيها معاندين، وأنت جل ثناؤك قلت مبتدئا وتتولت بالإنعام متكرما. أفمن كان مؤمنا كمن كان فاسقا لا يستوون. إلهي وسيدي فاسألك بالقدرة التي قدرتها وبالقضية التي هتمتها وحكمتها وغلبت من عليه أجريتها، أن تهب لي في هذه الليلة وفي هذه الساعة كل جرم أجرمته وكل ذنب أذنبته وكل قبيح أسررته وكل جهل عملته كتمته أو أعلنته أخفيته أو أظهرته. وكل سيئة أمرت بإثباتها كرامة الكاتبين الذين وكلتها بحفظ ما يكون مني وجعلتهم شهودا علي مع جواره وكنت أنت الرقيب علي من ورائهم والشاهد لما خفي عنهم وبرحمتك أخفيته وبفضلك سترت وأن توفر حظي من كل خير أنزلت أو إحساني فزلت أو بر انتشرت أو رزق بسطت أو ذنب تغفره أو خطأ تستر يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي ومالك ركي يا من بيده ناصيتي يا عليما بذري ومسكنتي يا خبيرا بفقري وفاقتي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب أسألك بحقك وقدسك وأعظم صفاتك وأسمائك أن تجعل أوقاتي في الليل والنهار بذكرك معمورة وبخدمتك موصولة وأعمالي عندك مقبولة حتى تكون أعمالي وأورادي كلها وردا واحدا وحالي في خدمتك سرمدا يا سيدي يا من عليه مؤولي يا من إليه شكوت أحوالي يا ربي يا ربي يا ربي قوي على خدمتك جواره واشدد على العظيمة جوانه وحبل الجد في خشيتك والدوام في الاتصال بخدمتك حتى أسرع إليك في ميادين السابقين وأسرع إليك في مبادرين واشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاقين وأدنو منك دنو المخلصين وأخافك مخافة المؤمنين واجتمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين اللهم ومن أرادني بسوء فأرد ومن كادني فقد واجعلني من أحسن عبيدك نصيبا عندك واقربهم منزلة منك واخصم زلفة لديك فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك وجد لي بجودك وعاطف علي بمجدك واحفظني برحمتك واجعل لساني بذكرك لهجا وقلبي بحبك متيما ومن علي بحسن إجابتك وكلني أسرتي واغفر زلتي فإنك قضيت على عبادك بإبادتك وأمرتهم بدعائك وضمنت لهم الإجابة فإليك يا ربي نصبت وجهي وإليك يا ربي مددت يدي فبعزتك استجب لي دعائي وبلغني منايا ولا تقطع من فضلك الرجاء واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي يا سريع الرضا اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء فإنك فعال لما تشاء يا من اسمه دواء وذكره شفاء وطاعة غنى ارحم من راس ماله الرجاء وسلاح البكاء يا سابق النعم يا دافع النقم يا نور المستوحشين في الظلم يا عالما لا يعلم صل على محمد وآل محمد وافعل به ما أنت حل وصلى الله على رسوله والآئمة الميامين من آله وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا اللهم صل على إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما صاحب الفاتحة
صل على محمد وآل محمد. बाबा मैं ढूंढती हूँ जंगल में खो गई हूँ पास अपने बुला लो बाबा मैं ढूंढती हूँ जंगल में खो गई हूँ पास अपने बुला लो एक बार बस मैं सीने पर सोना चाहती हूँ पास अपने बुला लो असगर को लेके बाबा मैदान में सो गए हो सोए जहाँ हो बाबा मुझको वहीं बुला लो गोदी में क्या तुम्हारे मैं भी नहीं पली हूँ पास अपने बुला लो बाबा मैं ढूंढती हूँ जंगल में खो गई हूँ पास अपने बुला लो अम्मू मेरे कहाँ हो तुम शेर बावफा हो बाली मेरी छिनी है दामन जला है देखो मांगूंगी अब न पानी बस इतना चाहती हूँ पास अपने बुला लो बाबा मैं ढूंढती हूँ जंगल में खो गई हूँ पास अपने बुला लो करबो बला के बन में घर लुट गया हमारा भाई चचा नहीं है सब लुट गए सहारा वीरान घर है सारा तन्हा में रह गई हूँ पास अपने बुला लो अब खा लिए तमाम है सर से खानों से कूं है जारी खानों से कूं है जारी है खाक मेरे सर पे मेरी तरफ भी देखो किस हाल में पड़ी हूँ पास अपने बुला लो। बाबा मैं ढूंढती हूँ, जंगल में खो गई हूँ, पास अपने बुला लो। क्या आ रही है तुम तक रोने की ये सदाएं, ए करबला सुना दो। बाबा को ये निदाएं बहती हुई ज़मीं पर मैं हाथ जोड़ती हूँ, पास अपने बुला लो। बाबा मैं ढूंढती हूँ, जंगल में खो गई हूँ, पास अपने बुला लो। एक बार बस मैं सीने पर सोना चाहती हूँ, पास अपने बुला लो। बाबा मैं ढूंढती हूँ, जंगल में खो गई हूँ, पास अपने बुला लो। सल्लल्लाहु अला मुहम्मद व आले मुहम्मद। रहिमल्लाह मन क़रा सूरत अल-फ़ातिहा।
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Sayyid Hasan Rizvi, respected elders, dearest brothers and sisters in Iman, Assalamu alaikum, Jamia wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Surah Fatiha is requested for all marhumin listed on the screen, as well as all other marhumin. Surah Mubarak al-Fatiha. Dua Shifa Maris is requested for all those in need here and elsewhere, as well as those listed on the screen. Let us recite together. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ 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 أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ. Ya Allah. Let us now invite Sayyid Hasan Rizvi to please come forward for tonight's Majalis. Bar Muhammad wa al Muhammad Salawat.
رحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة بعد الصلوات. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين شفيع المذنبين رحمة للعالمين سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا والطبيب ذنوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين إلى قيام يوم الدين أما بعد صلوات على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد Mu'mineen, mu'minat, brothers and sisters in Islam and Iman, Salamun alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We'll begin with a question on Slido before we move into our discussion for tonight, inshallah. Person asks, can you please elaborate regarding the hukum/ruling as it relates to SR? And I'm assuming by SR they mean Salman Rushdie. So the answer is, I can elaborate regarding that. Some of the details will have to be off the minbar. For those who are interested, we can have a private conversation about that. But in terms of at least one part of it that I think is beneficial is that people right now are talking about this fatwa or this hukum. So I want to clarify the difference because fatwa is not the same as hukum. These are two very technical words, but amongst Muslims, in the media, they're kind of just used interchangeably. In technical legal language, in fiqhi, shar'i language, they're not the same thing. Fatwa is what you and I are normally used to. When you follow a marja', you follow their fatawa. You follow a fatwa from a marja', right? So for example, the fatawa or fatwa from a marja' regarding the permissibility of drinking alcohol is that it's haram, right? Even one drop is haram. You can't have wine, liquor, etc. So that's a fatwa. It's a general, universal ruling that applies to all of the muqalladeen. Or another example. Let's say somebody follows Ayatollah Sistani, hafadahullah. So they ask him, okay, what is the fatwa? What's the ruling regarding chess, playing chess? And his fatwa, his ruling, is that it's haram. Right? You're not allowed to play. Another marja, let's say you follow somebody else, you follow Ayatollah Khamenei or Ayatollah Nasir Mukarram Shirazi or somebody else, their fatwa for the same question is that no, it's allowed, as long as you don't gamble, you can play. So, if you follow Sayyid Sistani, then that fatwa of chess being impermissible and haram applies to you. But if somebody else doesn't follow him, then that fatwa doesn't apply. Their own marja's fatwa applies. So, it's somebody trying to get an understanding of their responsibilities, what does God want? It's something that we typically deal with the simple way. Again, it's what a marja is giving you. It's a general principle about what God wants regarding certain situations. Now, what is hukum? Hukum is a bit different. Hukum's coming from the same exact word as hakim is coming, right? Ruler. In this case, a hukum, again, I'm talking about technical language, not the way that people just kind of toss out the words. A hukum is when a political leader, usually a religious political leader, right? That's the idea. Hakim al-shar. An Islamic political religious ruling leader gives a statement which is applicable to all Muslims under their jurisdiction. Everybody. So, if, for example, let's go back to the chess one. If, let's say, in a certain country, well, let's go with America, right? So again, follow Sayyid Sistani, you can't play chess. Follow a different other maraja, you can play. Let's just say a hukum is passed by a certain hakim. And they say no American should be buying or playing or be involved in chess. I'll give you an example. Now, that's not a fatwa. No matter who that hakim is, that political leader is, it doesn't matter if they're your marja or not. It has nothing to do with marja'iyat. It's not a fatwa. This is a political ruling, and it's wajib, with the most famous opinion, for every single person to comply with that hukum. Everybody has to follow that. Even other maraji' have to follow what the hukm is. This is the most famous opinion. So even if a mujtahid, for example, Allah, they're okay with playing chess, for example, if a hakim shar passes a hukum, they have to listen to the hakim shar and they have to follow accordingly. I don't want to give examples because they can get a little confusing, a little controversial, but that's generally the idea, right? So again, fatwa has to do with fiqh. It's a fatwa, it's a ruling that your marja gives you, only applicable if you are a muqallid and a follower of that marja. Hukum is more of a political thing. It's not necessarily God coming and saying this is what your duty is. It's a religious political leader, given whatever reason they might have, giving an order that now all Muslims need to follow, regardless of who their marja is. It has nothing to do with marja'iyah. And again, every Muslim following it, that's the majority opinion of the mujtahideen. So that's the difference there. So normally when you're thinking about issues over here, there aren't too many examples of hukums. If you see that somebody is classifying a certain idea as a hukum, then you have to ask the question, is this hukum based on a fatwa? Because if it's based on a fatwa, then it's not a hukum. Let me explain how that's the case. Now recite a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So let's go back to the alcohol example. So we know all maraja, right? You're not allowed to drink not even one drop of alcohol, you're not allowed. That's a fatwa, right? Simple. Now let's say some leader says, I am passing a hukum or I'm ordering that no Muslim should be drinking, like Budweiser beers. It's like, okay. And then somebody says, oh, he passed a hukum. Like, no, that's not a hukum. You can call whatever you want. There's already a fatwa which says you can't drink alcohol. We obviously know an application of that rule over here, which you and I have to do. It's called tashkhis al-mawdu. We apply the ruling. We apply the fatwa. We know alcohol is not allowed. Budweiser, beer is not allowed. It's an application of it. I don't need a marja to come and tell me that. No leader needs to come and tell me not to drink Budweiser or any other type of alcohol, right? I know it. I can apply it myself here. So if somebody, a religious leader, makes a statement and is just applying the law, you can call it a hukum, but it's not a hukum. If they are saying anything, all they're doing is they say is bayan ul fatwa. They're just explaining an application of the fatwa that's obvious to everybody. I don't know if that's clear or not. Fatwa, again, is just a universal fiqhi ruling, giving you, look, this stuff is haram, this stuff's halal. The marja does not come and tell you what it is. Another example, because I know this comes every once in a while as well, is, for example, at least for Aidul Sistani, he does not give a hukum or a ruling regarding sighting of the moon. That has nothing to do with us. And I don't know why people are contacting his office. His office has nothing to do with you and I over here in terms of moon sighting. Najaf has nothing to do with us. Again, following Ayatul Sistani at least. So his office can release whatever information they want about sighting the moon or declaring the first of this. It has absolutely nothing to do with us. And nobody can say, oh, the office declared that. Like, okay, do you know Ayatul Sistani's fatwa on moon sighting? Yes. It has to be seen in your locale with the naked eye, right? Either you see it or you have two just witnesses. And there's some other conditions too, but I don't want to get into that. But that's it. So you and I go out and look for it ourselves, or we wait for Razanko to go and look for it. That's what we do, right? And wait for the email or the message, whatever. And that's how we follow it. It's that simple. So if somebody says, no, they passed a hukum, they passed an order that, no, we have to do it over here. No. Somebody else's moon sighting stuff doesn't apply to us. And I'm saying that because this has been a problem for the past, I don't know how many years, is that we've been relying too much on other people's understanding and sighting of the moon. We have somebody here who's doing the zahmat, they're going around and looking for it. We can keep it something local. I don't think we have to worry ourselves at 3, 4 a.m., oh, did so-and-so see it? Who cares about them? What does halfway across the world, who cares if they saw it or not? What does San Diego have to do with us? What do they have to do with us? We're not going to be It's unity? No, it has nothing to do with unity. You're not praying Eid Namaz with San Diego, okay? This has nothing to do with unity. Don't mix up these ideas. Fatwa is that, look, you go out and you look for it with the naked eye. Whatever the office says, no, don't call it a hukum or a fatwa, it's none of that. They give you the universal principle. This is how you determine the first of the month. You and I, we do our duty. Or we tell somebody else to do their duty and then we just follow what they say, right? That's the way it goes. That's it. So in the same way, a scholar or a speaker or whatever can try to apply the ruling for us if they want to, but you don't call that a fatwa and you don't call that a hukum. They're just explaining something which should already be obvious. Now, how you want to apply that to current affairs, again, like we said, anybody who's interested, really interested, they're going to have to come and speak about that privately, inshallah. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. You know, if individuals are not competent in Islamic legal terms and the way that, you know, the legal Shari'i rulings of Islam mesh and meld with the sort of political dimension, because we don't have the separation. We don't have separation of church and state, as some other people, you know, push. We don't have that in Islam. It doesn't exist. Some people tried. That was called Saqifa. We don't believe in that, obviously, right? We don't have the separation. But sometimes the speakers that attempt to represent Islam, they have these preconceived notions and they have their own ideology, and they're not very well versed in the Islamic sciences. So they may say things which are incorrect, inappropriate, and detrimental for those who are listening. So we have to be very careful about who we're taking Islamic information from, right? Again, people who are well-intentioned, good akhlaq, smiley, you know, orators, whatever. But if they don't have the Islamic backing, they don't have basira and insight about religious affairs nor political affairs, we have to be very careful about where we're getting this information from, because they'll be spreading this information and then people will be going around and debating and discussing and going on when, you know, most people don't even know the simple difference between a fatwa and a hukum and be using those words very simply. So, one thing I'll add on is when somebody says that they put a, you know, he put a fatwa out on Salman Rushdie. You don't know terminology. That's not how it's used. You can't put a fatwa on somebody. It's not like putting a hit on somebody. That's not what it works. So when people are speaking in this way, you already know that they don't know what they're talking about in the first place, right? Again, they're mistaken, fine. But again, people who are mistaken about, I would say, simple things. And the reason I'm saying it's simple is because this is one of the first things that they teach you in an intro to fiqh class in the Hawza. What's the difference between a hukum and a fatwa? It's one of the first things that we actually learned. Because it's in taqleed, in the discussion there, that's what they talk about. So when people make these, again, very elementary mistakes, it's unfortunately revealing a lack of knowledge that's there. So it's just a humble advice to individuals to be careful where they're getting their information from. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Yesterday, we made our first step in describing some of the historical events post-Karbala. We're trying to figure out, in the aftermath on Yom Ashura, did Imam Hussein alayhi salam really achieve victory or not? If we're going to measure his victory by people standing up against Yazid, against Ibn Ziyad, against the Umayyad regime, well, what evidence do we have, right? If we don't have anything there, then somebody could say, your Imam lost the actual battle and he lost the war because Islam, nothing happened afterwards. You say, no, there was yes, the battle, quote unquote, was lost, but the larger war to save Islam, to do islah for the ummah, yes, we say he was victorious there. So we're going piece by piece through different pieces of evidence just to show that even in terms of people standing up against the Umayyads, against different personalities, and as we started with last night, even against Ibn Ziyad right to his face in the middle of the masjid, the first person that we saw was this brave individual, Abdullah ibn Afif al-Azdi, who, when the Ahlul Bayt were still present in Kufa, when Ibn Ziyad comes onto the minbar and begins to, in an arrogant way, talk about what he had done to the Ahlul Bayt and to say that somehow he achieved victory and Allah had humiliated them, Abdullah ibn Afif stands up and he speaks out against Ibn Ziyad. When Ibn Ziyad, again, I'm just quickly summarizing, when he tries to get him arrested, to try to take him, he sends his soldiers after him. In the middle of the masjid, Abdullah ibn Afif makes this chant, this call, Ya Mabrur, which was the chant of his tribe, Al-Azd, the Azdi tribe. 700 youth from his tribe come to his defense. They push the soldiers away, they take him home. We say that, and according to some historians, there were clashes then between the soldiers of Ibn Ziyad, meaning the government forces in Kufa, and between the Azdi tribe and another tribe they found from Yemen. So there was clashes in the streets. They lost that, unfortunately. And the soldiers of Ibn Ziyad were able to break down the door. They went to the house at night of Abdullah ibn Afif. They broke down the door. When they attacked him, Abdullah ibn Afif's daughter, whose name was most likely Safiya, gave, her father asked for his sword. She gave him the sword. He tried his best to, defeat as many of the soldiers as possible by her becoming his eyes and ears. Because remember, he was blinded from the battle of Jamal and Siffin, fighting with Imam Ali alayhi salam. He defeats some of the soldiers, but again, he's captured, taken to Ibn Ziyad. Still there, he speaks out against Ibn Ziyad. When Ibn Ziyad says, no, Allah humiliated you. He says, no, I was promised. He said, my hajat has always been to achieve shahada at the hands of the worst person possible. He said, you are the worst person possible. You're the worst creation, and Allah is going to give me shahadat from your hands. He's like, there's nothing better for me. I'm not humiliated. Allah is granting me the exact hajat that I want, the exact desire that I want. Ibn Ziyad then decapitates him and crucifies his body and puts his body on a crucifix in the middle of a landfill in Kufa, in a place called As-Sabkha, which literally means wasteland or landfill. This is how he tried to humiliate a great companion of Amir al-Mu'mineen. So this was the first story that we went through. Now what we'd like to do tonight, inshallah, is go through a few points of just reflecting on things which might be beneficial, right? Because if we're thinking about, this is the first shaheed after Karbala, what are some things we can pick up, both positive and negative, from his stand, from his uprising, from this mini revolution that took place, which may be beneficial for you and I in this day and age. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. First point is this. There's many individuals, even a certain school in Islamic thought, right? The Zaydi school of thought, which I don't want to go into the details, but in summation, their idea, and many people's ideas, even Shia right now, Shia Ithna Ashari, they think that if you want to be a Husseini, if you want to live the message of Ashura and Karbala, your job is to have some sort of military revolution and uprising, right? It has to be by force. And people talk about this all over, right? There are various resistance movements that have taken place throughout the world that have been led by Shia. Scholars in Pakistan, for example, say, look, we have to do something, again, militarily. We have to rise up against the Wahhabis that are there, for example. So they say, if you want to express the message and live the message of Imam Hussein, you have to do something. You have to come out and do what we call jihad al-asghar. You have to do something like that. Right? Come out with arms. And if they say, you don't do that, then you're not really being a Husseini. If you're just sitting at home, you're just doing Azadari, Matam and Nawha, you're just doing Majalis, that's not a real Husseini stuff. That's what some people claim. And the reason I mentioned Zaydis is because the whole school of thought of the Zaydi Shias was that our Imam, they claim, the Imam has to be somebody that rises up militarily. That's why they follow Zayd ibn Ali, right? Zayd, the son of Imam Sajjad. They follow him as an Imam because he stood up against the Umayyads of that time. He said, so he's our Imam because a real Imam would stand up against the ruler, just like Imam Hussein did. That's their, understanding. Of course, we don't agree with that because we obviously have, Imam Hasan's Sira and other statements from the Ahlul Bayt. But khair. So this is in the minds of certain Shias, like the Zaydis, and even some of us. We're like, yeah, we expect some sort of violent thing. That's why, again, Mukhtar always comes to our mind. Like, yeah, he's a real Husseini because he stood up. Abdullah ibn Afif. Yes, there was a sort of, clash between the forces. But where did it start from? What he did initially was not standing up with a sword against Ibn Ziyad in the masjid. All he did was speak against a tyrant. That's all he had to do. In the middle of the khutbah, when he heard that dhulm, oppression, injustice, something which was incorrect and batil was being said, all he did was speak out against it. Sometimes we diminish the quality of just simply speaking out against a fasiq or a zalim or somebody who's not representing Islam properly. That itself is a jihad. And these are not my words, these are the words of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. He's reported to have said, Ala la yamna'anna rajulan mahabatun nas an yutakallam bil haqq idha alama. He says, a person, you could say a man here, a real person, should never let any sort of fear stop them from speaking out against something which is false. Whether that's fear of death, whether that's fear of losing dignity in the eyes of people, maybe losing your position in the community, position at work, whatever it is. Rasulullah is saying, look, never let that become a manr and forbid you and stop you and block you from speaking out for the truth and against what's batil. Always speak up for the truth in that sense. إِذَا عَلَمَهُ, if you know it. Going back to what we were saying before. Some people, they say, oh, I don't know, I could be wrong. Okay, if you could be wrong, then don't say it. If you don't know what you're talking about, then don't say anything at all. It's okay. In Nahjul Balagha, Imam Ali says, look, if you don't know, if there's a chance you don't know what you're talking about, it's best to just keep your mouth shut. Just be quiet. You're not going to hurt anybody if you don't say anything. But if you speak, you say something, and then afterwards there's an uproar about it, and people find out, no, the person was wrong, or they caused an issue, and then all the WhatsApp forwards and letters and YouTube shares and all that stuff, well, that's going to be, you can't really stop that, right? And the analogy Imam Ali gives in Nahjul Balagha is what? He says that, if you let a little bit of poison come through a small stream or river, and it ends up into a big body of water, then you've allowed everybody to get poisoned who's going to drink from there, right? He says, so what you do is you cut off that stream and that river right away. You don't let that poison go to the bigger body of water. So many of us might be carrying around that poison. Again, the analogy here is we might be saying something incorrect or untrue, or we just don't even know. It may not be false, but we're not sure. So Imam Ali says, asamt, sukut, being quiet and not saying anything is much better. If you don't know, just say, I don't know. Nothing wrong with that. Say, I don't know, I'm not sure about this. Don't give a whole, speech about stuff that you may not be sure about. It may not be in your benefit. So don't let people stop you. Don't be in fear of people and therefore stop speaking for haqq and speaking for what is right. Again, conditionally though, you have to be able to know what you're talking about. Have ilm and know what you're talking about. Then Rasulullah says, Ala inna afdal al-jihad, the best jihad is what? Kalimatu haqqin inda sultanin jair. The greatest jihad, according to Rasulullah here, is a word of haqq in front of a sultan jair, in front of a oppressive, unjust ruler. Now, the wording here is very interesting, right? See, inda sultanin jair. Some people think that they're doing their duty by tweeting certain stuff or, like tagging, I don't know, Biden or whatever. No, you're not applying the ruling in that sense, right? Simply, going out maybe and protesting or, putting out a post about your opinion about Palestine against the Zionist regime or against other oppressive rulers. No, that doesn't count as this. I'm not diminishing what you're doing. If you want to do that stuff, fine. I have different criticisms of, this woke social media stuff. But if you're trying to apply this ruling here, this recommendation from Rasulullah of saying, I'm speaking out, right? It's wajib for us to speak out against them. Said no, he's saying, Inda Sultan and Jair. When you're in front of that Sultan, when Abdullah ibn Afif is speaking out, he's right in front of Ibn Ziyad. Ibn Ziyad is saying, hey, who said that? He got up and said, I'm the one who said that. No fear in him whatsoever. He said, no, I'm the one who said it. Who are you? How can you say something like that to me? So this ruling's applied when people go to these, White House dinners, taking, maybe instead of taking a selfie with Biden or Kamala or any of these other people, maybe you should be speaking out there. Maybe that's the time, right? Instead of saying, oh my God, guess who I met, if you really want to apply the law, right? So let's watch out with the virtue signaling and things like that. So that's when it would really happen. Or, if we have these so-called Muslim politicians who are Muslim by name, or they're claiming that they're following Islam, but every policy that they stand for in Congress and the House has nothing to do with Islam, right? Every idea they stand for is like they took a playbook out of somebody else who's a non-Muslim or an atheist. So, what makes them actual Muslim in terms of their politics? Nothing, right? Khair. Now, a question is this. Why is it that Abdullah ibn Afif didn't have this fear? This old blind man. Why was he able to speak out in front of Ibn Ziyad like this? Somebody who we know what happened in Kufa. We know that Ibn Ziyad was, he was ruthless. He was murdering Shias left and right, imprisoning them. Why is he getting up in the middle of the masjid and just, speaking to Ibn Ziyad like this? Like, many of us, if we had the same thing in front of a police officer or a judge, we would probably be very, very careful the way we chose our words, right? Or in front of, customs and, border patrol or TSA, we're very, very careful sometimes the way we speak. Why is he so, just able to say something like this? And they say, yeah, I'm the one who said that. Why is that? This brings us to our second point. And this, we're going to look at a few riwayat. First one from Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib, alayhi salatu wasalam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. He's reported to have said, من يكن الله نصيرا يغلب خصمه ويكن له حزبا. So whoever decides that Allah is going to be my helper, my partner, like that's the person that is, in my corner. Then this person, if Allah's on their side and they're choosing Allah to be on their side as their support, he said this person will always be able to dominate and win over and beat their adversaries and opponents. And Imam Ali says that they will always have a group supporting them, a hizb. They will always have somebody there backing them up. If you're standing for truth, you always get somebody to support them. In another hadith, he says, نِعْمَ الْعَوْنَ الْمُظَاهِرَةِ. The best type of support is when you don't just say, yeah, I got your back, in words. You say, no, if you do something, the minute you give us a signal, we're going to come to your support. The minute you say something. What was it in the story? Abdullah ibn Afif, when the soldiers of Ibn Ziyad are coming to try to arrest him, what does he say? Ya Mabrur. He gives this chant of their tribe, and immediately 700 people come to his defense. One of the reasons why he had no fear, obviously he had a high level of taqwa, but the other thing is that practically, he said, I've got a whole tribe that's going to back me up. The reason that many people are unable to speak out against oppression is because they don't have anybody to support them or back them up. If a person, imagine you and I were in the same situation where there were many Muslims and there was an oppressive person, would we be able to say something against that oppressive ruler or oppressive individual, especially if we know that that person is ruthless and could do anything to us? Well, if we knew that every person behind me had my back, then yeah, maybe we would. But if the people behind you, again saying, look, man, I'm with you in spirit, but hey, the cops come or anything happens, sorry, I can't do anything there. And you look at some of these protests that take place, right? Even in the U.S., the various clashes between, these various groups, like these anarchist groups and these social justice groups and whatever, they come out, they protest the police, right? When they had these Black Lives Matter protests and all these various ones that happen. And when somebody would come out and try to stand up to a police officer, sometimes what happened is everybody else would come and back them up, right? They would try to push the police back, whatever. I'm not encouraging pushing back against police, by the way, as a disclaimer, just in case. I'm not advocating that. But I'm saying that they had the support system behind them where they could do this. They could take whatever the tear gas that was thrown at them, they would throw it back. Or they would push back against the police. Why? Because they had a whole bunch of other supporters behind them that were able to, fight back. Or to push back against the police officers or SWAT or whatever it was. So that's why people would do that. Now again, for us, so yes, we're in love with Imam Hussein. Well, we'll do everything to support that. So okay, let's just say we were in the same situation. Again, we can't take it in, let's say not in this situation. We were in a country. Let's say we were in Iraq in Saddam's time, al-Mal'un. And let's just say we went out in the streets and we tried to perform ziyarat when he didn't allow it. And everybody's like, yeah, let's all go out together to try to perform ziyarat. If Saddam sends soldiers, we're all going to fight back against them. And if they say anything, you say something, we'll all protect one another. Would we be able to do that, knowing what Saddam did? Saddam was ruthless, right? I don't want to share those stories in the minbar. Most of you know the kind of things that Saddam did to people in front of their own families, right? Children in front of their parents, parents in front of their children. Disgusting things. Would we be able to speak like that? Well, maybe if I knew that I had, like Abdullah did, 700 people to come out and support from one little chant, maybe we would. Were we in that same situation? Do we have that kind of support? So what we have to think about is, before we start speaking out and saying, yes, we have to talk against the oppressors and this and that, have we actually set up a proper grassroots movement in our community where we can say, no, we are strong enough where we can come out together and speak against people who are oppressive. We can come out and say the things that we believe in because we know that we're going to have a support system here. Or, no, are we going to be like lone wolves and lone rebels and things like that? And the person's going to be taken away and then pushed to the side. I had nothing to do with that individual. I've got nothing to do with them, sorry. Are we going to be those like sellouts where, the minute we're questioned a little bit, we know how things are, right? People are questioned. A lot of you, I'm sure, you go back and forth between here and Africa, Dubai, Canada. Internationally, when you travel, many of you, I'm sure, you're stopped by Customs and Border. And we know what they do, right? Their job is intimidation. They toss out the pictures. They say, hey, do you know who this is? Do you know who this is? Let me see your phone. Let me see all this. Again, this is not legal advice. You go to your own lawyers for that. But, they intimidate this way. Say, who is this person? Do you know this sheikh? Do you know this one? Who are his contacts? What does he say in the minbar? What's going on? Has he said anything anti-American? What are they doing? What are they doing? That's what they do. That's their job, is to gather this information, right? So some people, they switch to sellout mode very, very quickly. All right, and they start just spilling the beans. And I can understand some people might be in fear. I get it. Sometimes you say, oh, I have nothing to hide. Okay, sure, fine. What if we actually had support systems where, no, we've gotten legal advice, we know what we can do and cannot do. We know exactly what to say, what not to say, right? We need that kind of support system. Again, this is not legal advice, that's a disclaimer here. So I'm not telling you what to do and what not to do, but we have to be prepared. And that's why many communities, what they do is they have somebody come and they say, look, when you're stopped, if the FBI comes to your door, if somebody comes, this is what you're supposed to say, this is what you do. Right? If we're prepared for that, then we'll know what to do. If we don't have that preparation, then we're going to be caught off guard. And then most likely, because their job is to catch us off guard, when they catch you off guard, then that's we're in big trouble. And then we start saying more than we need to, and then things get really difficult from there. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. It goes even beyond just the sort of physical support in that sense too. In another riwayah, Imam Ali alayhi salam is reported to have said, ما حُبِتَتِ الْأُخُوَةِ بِمِثْلِ الْمُوَاسَةِ. Nothing protects and supports ukhuwa, brotherhood, like being able to support somebody financially. Okay, maybe I can't have your back physically, fine. But there's a great emphasis in our riwayat saying, look, we want to make sure that amongst our community members, we have nobody that's suffering. We have nobody that's struggling financially. That if somebody needs whatever, a loan, they need, qadr hasana, they need, whatever they need, we'll be able to help them out. We know from other riwayat as well, that they say that the true sign of a real good community is that one mu'min can reach into the pocket of his mu'min brother or sister, take whatever they want, and that person who's the money is being taken from them, they're not even looking at, like, take whatever you want, right? This is all for the community's use. This is you, as my brother, my sister, you have whatever you want. Do we have a financial support system like that? Alhamdulillah, welfare does an amazing job, no doubt. But I'm saying there's much more support to, there. A lot of us might be in debt. We have loans and things like that. That's another type of support system there. What about people who are running businesses? Do we keep businesses amongst ourselves? Like other communities, other religions, they only support themselves. How many of us say, look, I can save an extra $10 if I go to this non-Shia or this non-Muslim, so I'm going to go there? No. A sort of support is working within our own too, if we can. Now again, if they do a terrible job, well, okay, that's different. Or if they're not honest in their work, okay, maybe that's a little different. But ideally, yeah, if we have people who are in industries and businesses and offer services within our community, well, number one, we should be good at our job, hopefully. Number two, we shouldn't be looking for, little 5 cent, 10 cent dollar discounts here and there. We should be able to say, look, you're earning your halal rizq and income like this, let me support you first. You're my brother or my sister doing this, I want to support you. All right, that's a sense of support as well too. It doesn't just mean giving handouts. It says, oh, I know somebody who does this business. Let me support them first. Let me go there. All right, that's the way we should be taking care of one another. So when we're looking at possibly some of the reasons why Abdullah ibn Afif initially had this success in his movement, although, yeah, eventually failed. They couldn't defeat the soldiers. But initially, he has a support system behind him. All the people are there standing up with him. Do we have that right now? And more importantly, we'd ask, the system of wilayat is just this, is when you have somebody that makes a call, everybody else just follows suit. All he says were 2 words. He says, Ya Mabrur, which is their chant. And everybody gets up and comes to his defense. Do we have anything like that? Honestly speaking. There's one alim who, in his community, the people kept saying, we're ready for the imam to come, we're ready to support him, we have to do whatever it takes. Even you, the Tati Alam, we're willing to do whatever you say. Whatever you want. We're ready for the movement. Like, what are we supposed to do next? Tell us. He says, no, I know that you're just saying this, it's out of love, but you're not actually going to do anything. It's like, no, it seriously is. So he said, there's a few people in that group. He said, look, let's say I called you at 3 a.m. And all I said is, look, I need you to go, empty your bank accounts, show up at my doorstep with every single thing that you have. Sell all your assets, everything you have, cash out everything, come to my doorstep, 3 a.m. call. I said, no details, I'm not saying anything else to you. You got to sell everything you have, bring all your valuables, all your cash, come to my doorstep, I'm calling you 3 a.m., you come to me, give me everything, and you go back home. No questions asked. I said, you going to do that? I said, probably not. I said, okay. So he's like, we're not ready then. It's like, this is a way that things are set up. A system of wilaya, we'd love to say that, yeah, if Imam Mazman, if the 12th Imam said that to me, then I'd do that. The whole system that we see of wilayat is that. In the example of the Imams, we talked about this once before, the Imams had this system of wikala, because not everybody had access to the Imams, right? If the Imam is in Medina, and the Shia are in Basra, in Kufa, or in any other place, they set up their representatives, their wukala. Their wukala would take orders from the Imam, and secretly, because of the way that the Umayyads and Abbasids were oppressing the Shias, and watching their actions, they would make sure that, hey, we got this order from the Imam to collect this, to distribute money like this, or here's the new thing that we have to do, or don't do this. That's the way it worked. So the question is, do we have any system like that? Or if somebody just gave, one simple order, would we all just kind of follow suit like that? Or are we still in a phase where I'm not really sure, you got to prove it to me, give me some evidence, I need to see this and this, it's got to go through so-and-so subcommittee or whatever it is. Is that the way we're going to be? Well, if that's the case, then we've got a long way to work. And maybe that system of wilaya is not in our communities yet. We have a bit more work to do before we get to something like this. Inshallah ta'ala. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Inshallah, in our next sessions, we'll continue and attempt to look at some of the other movements that happened post-Kufa now, and we're going to make our way onto Sham. One more salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. When the Ahlul Bayt finally were able to make their way towards Sham, we don't have too many details in our riwayat, in our historical books about what took place. And some people, they wonder, what may have taken place there. There are some riwayat which say that the Ahlul Bayt, Imam Sajjad, Bibi Zainab, the other women and children who were there, along with the heads of the shuhada, as they're being sent from Kufa to Sham. We can only imagine how difficult it was for them. The pain that they've already been carrying with them from Karbala to Kufa, and now the long journey from Kufa to Sham. And they say, some riwayat say, that Imam Sajjad didn't say one word on that whole journey. Not one word to anybody. Even though that same iron collar, those same nails which were put on him before, would put on him again. The same heat of the desert sun was still blazing on him. The same ropes that the women and children were tied in, they were still tied in. Being put on camels without saddles, same thing. No difference there. Some of our ulama have said that there is some possibility that we have an idea of what may have taken place along this journey. And they say that perhaps we have a reason for why there wasn't so much conversation and so much information. And they say that it's because if certain information came to light amongst the people, like Shimr, who was with them, and other members of the Umayyad Empire, the soldiers who were with them. See, if they learned about certain things, they heard certain things, they learned about certain relationships, they learned about the love between these members, then the soldiers would use that against them. So some of our ulama have said, this is one of the reasons why Imam Sajjad was very careful the way he spoke to Sakina. They say on this whole ride, he was very careful not to show too much affection to Sakina. Can you imagine this older brother with his young sister, wanting nothing more than to give her a hug, just to give her a kiss, wanting to console her. They've just lost their father. They've watched the most gruesome death possible. Now the job of a sibling is to come and take care of their younger sibling. This is all Imam Sajjad wants to do. Can you imagine that because of this iron collar, he probably could not even turn his head, because every time he would, those nails would protrude and scar his neck over and over again. Some ulama say, along the way, whenever they would camp out in certain areas, when they would try to sleep, they say that sometimes the soldiers would make Imam Sajjad walk through the thorny areas in the desert. While everybody else would be able, the soldiers would walk in the nice areas, they would make sure to cause extra pain to Imam Sajjad by making him walk through the thorny bushes on the way there. And they say that because his hands were tied, Because his neck was tied, when he felt the pain, he wouldn't even want to look down or move his hands because that would cause him even more pain. He couldn't do anything to it. So those thorns would stay in his feet and on his legs. Some ulama say that at night, Sakina would come and sneak to the area where Imam Sajjad is. And she would come and try to pull out those thorns from the feet of Imam Sajjad and begin kissing them. And when this happened, Imam Sajjad said, Ya Sakina, oh my sister, please don't do this. All I want to do is give you a hug and all I want to do is console you. But if Shimr finds out the relationship between us, he's going to use that against us. Don't let him see you do this. Go back. And Sakina didn't listen to him. She would take out the thorns one by one. She would kiss the feet of Imam Sajjad. And then finally when Shimr came one night and he found out what was happening here, he said, you two are not just random individuals. You must be related. He says, now I understand that you are brother and sister. And when this happened anytime now in the future, when Imam Sajjad was moving too slow, or Sakina and the other women were moving too slow, Imam Sajjad was being whipped by Shimr over and over again. He would whip Sakina over and over again and would use this against them. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون رضا بقضائه وتسليما لأمره صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. Ya Hussein.
Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ye maatam शबीर तेरा ये मातम शबीर तेरा ये मातम शबीर तेरा ये मातम ताहश्र रहेगा जारी ताहश्र रहेगा कायम ये मातम शबीर तेरा ये मातम शबीर तेरा ये मातम ये फर्श अज़ा ये गिरिया ये मजलिस मातम नोहा ये अश्कों की बरसात ये खून का बहता दरिया हम करते रहे हैं पे हम करते रहेंगे हर दम ये मातम शबीर तेरा ये मातम शबीर तेरा ये मातम हम मातम करने वाले हम नौहा पढ़ने वाले बेशक दुआए ज़हरा शबीर परोने वाले ये अश्क नहीं है वाइज ये जख्मों का है मरहम ये मातम शबीर तेरा ये मातम तेरा ये मातम ऐ मुनकिर मातम सुन ले मातम से न रख बेजारी ज़हरा की अमानत है ये कर तू भी अमानतदारी मिलता है नसीबों से ये ज़हरा के घराने का गम ये मातम शबीर तेरा ये मातम शबीर तेरा ये मातम ज़ैनब ने किया ये मातम जब शाम की जिंदानों में लगता था कयामत आई, कुफार के ऐवानों में 1400 बरस गुजरे हैं, मातम न हुआ अब तक कम। ये मातम शबीर तेरा, ये मातम शबीर तेरा, ये मातम ताहशर रहेगा जारी, ताहशर रहेगा कायम। ये मातम शबीर तेरा, ये मातम शबीर तेरा, ये मातम। या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन। सूरत मुबारकतुल फातिहा।
बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम। अल्लाहुम्मा सल्लि अला मुहम्मद व आलि मुहम्मद। अस्सलामु अलैका या रसूल अल्लाह, अस्सलामु अलैका या अमीर अल-मुअमिनीन अली इब्न अबी तालिब, अस्सलामु अलैकी या फातिमत अज़-ज़हरा सय्यदती निसाइल आलमीन, अस्सलामु अलैका या हसन अल-मुज्तबा, अस्सलामु अलैका या हुसैन शहीद बिकरबला, अस्सलामु अलैका या वारिथ आदम सफ़वतिल्लाह, अस्सलामु अलैका या वारिथ नूहिन नबिय्यिल्लाह, अस्सलामु अलैका या वारिथ इब्राहीम खलीलिल्लाह, अस्सलामु अलैका या वारिथ मूसा कलीमिल्लाह, अस्सलामु अलैका या वारिथ ईसा रूहिल्लाह, अस्सलामु अलैका या वारिथ मुहम्मदिन हबीबिल्लाह, अस्सलामु अलैका या वारिथ अमीरिल मुअमिनीन वलिय्यिल्लाह, अस्सलामु अलैका या इब्न मुहम्मदिनिल मुस्तफ़ा, अस्सलामु अलैका या इब्न अलीइनिल मुर्तज़ा, अस्सलामु अलैका या इब्न फ़ातिमतज़ ज़हरा, अस्सलामु अलैका या इब्न खदीजतल कुबरा, अस्सलामु अलैका या थारुल्लाहि व इब्न थारिह वल-वित्रल मौतूर, अशहदु अन्नका क़द अक़मत अस्सलात व आतैत अज़्ज़कात व अमरत बिल-मअरूफ़ व नहैत अनिल मुनकर व अताअत अल्लाह व रसूलहु हत्ता अताकल यकीन, फलअन अल्लाहु उम्मतन क़तलतका व लअन अल्लाहु उम्मतन ज़लमतका व लअन अल्लाहु उम्मतन समियत बिज़ालिक फ़रज़ियत बिह। या मौलाय या अबा अब्दिल्लाह, अशहदु अन्नका कुन्त नूरन फ़िल अस्लाबिश शामिख़ा वल अरहामिल मुतहहरा, लम तुनज्जिसकल जाहिलिय्यतु बिअंजासिहा व लम तुल्बिसका मिन मुदलहिम्माति थियाबिहा, व अशहदु अन्नका मिन दआइमिद्दीन व अरकानिल मुअमिनीन, व अशहदु अन्नकल इमामुल बर्रुत तक़ियुर रज़ियुज़ ज़कियुल हादियुल महदी, व अशहदु अन्नल अइम्मत मिन वुल्दिका कलिमतुत तक़वा व अलामुल हुदा वल उर्वतुल वुथक़ा वल हुज्जतु अला अहलिद दुनिया, व अशहदुल्लाह व मलाइकतहु व अंबियाउ व रुसुलहु अन्नी बिकुम मुअमिन व बिया बिकुम मुकिन, बिशराइ दीनी व ख़वातीमी अमली, व क़ल्बी लिक़ल्बिकुम सिल्म व अमरी लिअमरिकुम मुत्तबी, सलवातुल्लाहि अलैकुम व अला अरवाहिकुम व अला अजसादिकुम व अला अजसामिकुम व अला शाहिदिकुम व अला गाइबिकुम व अला ज़ाहिरिकुम व अला बातिनिकुम। السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله. السلام عليك يا ابن نبي الله. السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا ابن حسين الشهيد. السلام عليك أيها الشهيد وابن الشهيد. السلام عليك أيها المظلوم وابن المظلوم. لعن الله أمة قتلتك، ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك، ولعن الله أمة سميت بذلك فرضيت به. السلام عليكم يا أولياء الله وأحباءه. السلام عليكم يا أسفياء الله ووداءه. السلام عليكم يا أنصار دين الله. السلام عليكم يا أنصار رسول الله. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليكم يا أنصار فاطمة سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي محمد الحسن بن علي الولي الزكي الناصح. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي عبد الله. بأبي أنتم وأمي تبتم وتابت الأرض التي فيها دفنتم، وفزتم فوزا عظيما، فيا ليتني كنت معكم فأفوز معكم. السلام عليك يا أبا الفضل العباس بن أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا ابن سيد الوسيين. السلام عليك يا ابن أول القوم إسلاما، وأقدمهم إيمانا، وأقومهم بدين الله، وأهوتهم على الإسلام. أشهد لقد نصحت لله ولرسوله ولأخيك فنعم الأخ المواسي. فلعن الله أمة قتلتك، ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك، ولعن الله أمة استحلت منك المهارم وانتهكت حرمة الإسلام. فنعم الصابر المجاهد المهام الناصر والأخ الدافي وعن أخيه المجيب إلى طاعة ربه، الراغب فيما زهد فيه غيره من الثواب الجزيل والثناء الجميل. وألحقك الله بدرجة آبائك في جنات النعيم. السلام عليك يا علي زين العابدين. السلام عليك يا محمد الباكر. السلام عليك يا جعفر الصادق. السلام عليك يا موسى الكاظم. السلام عليك يا علي الرضا. السلام عليك يا محمد التقي الجواد. السلام عليك يا علي النكي الحادي. السلام عليك يا حسن العسكري. السلام عليك يا مولانا يا صاحب العصر والزمان. الأمان الأمان الأمان. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن. السلام عليك يا كعبة الإيمان. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كن لوليك لهجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه في هذه الساعة وفي كل وليا وحافظا وكائدا وناصرا ودليلا وأينا، أرضك توأى ودمتيا فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.